What happens when the most powerful man on Wall Street, polished, ruthless, untouchable, collides with a young woman who has nothing to lose? Alexander Harrison was born into wealth and pressure, a man trained to control everything and everyone around him. Emily Carter arrived in New York with little more than a second-hand suitcase and a stubborn dream. Their worlds should never have crossed, and yet they did in the most humiliating way possible, in a boardroom where laughter nearly destroyed a $50 million deal. But here's the question: was it fate, or just a mistake? Can love truly exist between two people divided by money, power, and expectation? Or is it doomed to be nothing more than a game of survival, one using control, the other clinging to dignity? Over 16 chapters, you'll witness betrayal, redemption, and a love story tested by class, pride, and impossible choices. A story that asks, is true power found in control, or in letting go? If you're ready to find out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and let's begin this journey together. The polished glass doors of Harrison & Co. gleamed like mirrors under the fluorescent lights of Manhattan's financial district. For Emily Carter, they felt more like a gateway into another universe than just an office entrance. At 25, Emily had traded the quiet plains of Montana for this roaring city. Back home. The loudest sound at night had been the crickets outside her mother's porch. Here, the constant hum of traffic never slept. She had arrived in New York with a suitcase, a second-hand laptop, and a stubborn belief that her father's words don't settle for small dreams. Were worth following. Today was supposed to be her chance. The day she stepped into the boardroom of one of the most prestigious firms in America, her internship at Harrison & Co., had been her ticket into the world she'd only seen in movies and glossy magazines. Emily clutched her thrift store leather portfolio like it was armor as she slipped into the boardroom, trying to disappear into the beige wallpaper. Her supervisor had whispered quickly before abandoning her, "Just observe, don't speak, and for heaven's sake, don't draw attention to yourself." The men and women around the long mahogany table wore tailored suits that looked more expensive than her entire college tuition. Their confidence filled the room. Emily's hands were clammy, her throat dry, and then he walked in. Alexander Harrison, known across Wall Street simply as Alex, entered with the gravity of a man who owned the air around him. 34 years old, already CEO, and the heir to the Harrison financial empire. His reputation preceded him: brilliant, merciless, intolerant of failure. The business journals had crowned him the Frost King of finance. Emily had expected someone imposing, but nothing prepared her for the intensity of his presence. The way conversation stilled when he spoke, the sharpness of his gaze, the certainty in his voice. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alex began, his tone cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "Today we present our Q4 projections to the Brighton Group. This partnership will secure our dominance in the Western market." Every eye was on him, except Emily's for just a second. She saw it. On the polished Italian leather of Alex Harrison's shoe clung a small, humiliating detail, a square of tissue, cheap restroom kind, trailing like a ghostly flag whenever he moved. Emily bit her lip so hard she tasted blood. She tried to focus on the graphs projected on the screen, on the gravity of the financial stakes. But each time Alex shifted, the tissue fluttered behind him. "Don't laugh. Emily, don't you dare laugh." Her shoulders trembled. She thought of sad things: her father's funeral, overdue rent, even the stubborn Montana winters, but none of it could smother the absurdity before her eyes. "Our margins have grown by 18% this quarter," Alex declared with icy authority. The tissue swayed like it was celebrating. A small snort escaped Emily's throat. Heads turned slightly. She coughed, pretending it was nothing, praying no one noticed. But the Brighton investors were already leaning in, serious, demanding. "Mr. Harrison, our only concern is whether your firm maintains the highest standards of professionalism." Alex's jaw tightened. Brighton can rest assured. Precision defines every aspect of Harrison & Co. The tissue performed a dramatic twirl behind him. Emily couldn't take it. The laughter burst out of her, uncontained, filling the solemn boardroom like a fire alarm. Not a polite chuckle, full-blown, tear-streaming laughter. Silence fell. 20 pairs of eyes turned, horrified. Miss Carter. Someone hissed, but it was too late. Emily gasped between laughter, pointing helplessly. You have tissue on your shoe. For the first time, Alex Harrison faltered. His gaze dropped, his face flushed a shade of red that Manhattan skyscrapers had never seen. He ripped the tissue from his shoe, fury radiating from him. The Brighton delegation exchanged looks. Their leader, Mr. Brighton himself, stood with cold finality. Perhaps we should reschedule this meeting when your staff can maintain appropriate decorum. No, please, Alex began, but they were already gathering their papers, sweeping out with clipped efficiency. The room emptied, leaving silence heavy enough to crush bone. A pen dropped. It sounded like a gunshot. At the head of the table, Alexander Harrison stared directly at Emily. His voice, low and controlled, was far more terrifying than any shout. You just cost this company a $50 million deal? Emily's laughter died instantly, her heart dropping into her stomach. I didn't mean... You're fired. 2 words, delivered with the precision of a verdict. Security will escort you out. Pack whatever you have if you have anything at all. And don't ever return to this building. He turned sharply, disappearing through the glass doors. Emily stood alone, her cheeks burning, clutching her portfolio. The dream that had brought her from Montana to New York had just gone up in smoke over a square of tissue, she whispered to herself, trembling. Well, that's one way to make a first impression. The subway screeched as it rattled past her apartment window, shaking the thin walls as if threatening to collapse them. Emily Carter sat cross-legged on her narrow bed, the springs groaning under her weight, staring at the glow of her ancient laptop. The screen flickered like a dying candle. She had spent the last 2 days rewriting her resume for the 100th time. No matter how she arranged the words, strong communicator, eager learner, motivated team player. The truth stared back at her. She was the girl who laughed at a CEO's shoe and cost a company $50 million. The room smelled faintly of burnt toast. Dinner had been 2 slices of day-old bread with a thin smear of peanut butter. She had tried to convince herself it was enough, but her stomach disagreed, grumbling like a restless dog. On the wobbly table near the bed sat a single apple, bruised and soft. She was saving it for breakfast. Emily rubbed her temples, the weight of exhaustion pressing in. She had come to New York with less than $300 after paying her first month's rent on this Brooklyn sublet. Her savings, carefully scraped together from part-time jobs back in Montana, were already disappearing like snow melting under the spring sun. The phone buzzed. "Hi, Mom," Emily said softly, forcing cheer into her voice. Her mother's voice, warm but tinged with worry, came through the crackling line. "Emily, how are you holding up? You sound tired." "I'm fine. Really, just busy." The pause on the other end spoke louder than words. Her mother had always been able to sense when Emily was lying. "Honey, maybe it's time to come home. The Benson farm needs help with their orchards this season. You always loved picking apples as a girl." Emily closed her eyes, the image of Montana's wide skies filling her mind, the smell of hay, the slow rhythm of life, the comfort of home. For a moment, the idea of surrendering to that simplicity tugged at her heart. But then came the other voice, the memory of her father, gone too soon, telling her that life had more to offer than small-town limits. "Don't let fear pin you down. The world is bigger than Montana. I don't want to give up." "Mom," Emily whispered. "Not yet." Her mother sighed, gentle and resigned. "I know. Just promise me you'll take care of yourself." After hanging up, Emily sat in silence, staring at the cracked paint on the wall. The city outside buzzed with life horns blaring, voices shouting, the distant wail of a siren. It was a reminder that New York didn't slow down for anyone. What am I doing here, she wondered. Her chest tightened with the weight of doubt. She had dreamed of Manhattan's bright lights, of proving herself in the big leagues. But now, she was a punchline. She had lost her internship, her dignity, and possibly her future. Her eyes fell on the small photo taped to the wall. It was of her and her father at a county fair years ago, both smiling with cotton candy in their hands. His eyes sparkled with mischief, the same way they always did when he spoke about the world beyond Montana. Emily touched the photo with trembling fingers. I can't quit, not after coming this far. She pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders, the chill of the drafty apartment seeping through. She imagined what her coworkers must be saying about her, the intern who couldn't control her laughter, the girl who sabotaged a multi-million-dollar deal. Shame burned in her chest, but beneath it, something stronger flickered, defiance. They could laugh all they wanted. She would find another chance, somewhere, somehow. On the desk. Her laptop chimed weakly. The Wi-Fi connection stuttered, but the job board finally loaded. One position after another demanded years of experience she didn't have. She scrolled endlessly, her eyes heavy, until finally she shut the laptop with a sigh. Emily lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint drip of water from a leaky pipe. Sleep didn't come easy. Her mind raced with worries. How long before her savings ran out? How many more rejection emails would arrive? Would she end up on a bus back to Montana, carrying her dreams like broken luggage? But even in the darkness, she made herself a quiet promise. She would not give up. Not because of Alexander Harrison, not because of one humiliating mistake, not because the city was cruel. She would fight to stay, because somewhere inside, she still believed there was a place in New York for a girl like her, a girl who might be imperfect, but who refused to let imperfection define her. Emily turned on her side, clutching the blanket close. Outside, a siren wailed, fading into the distance. She whispered into the empty room, "Tomorrow will be better." And for the first time since the disaster in that gleaming boardroom, she almost believed it. The line at Corner Brew, a cramped little cafe in Brooklyn, curled all the way to the door. The air was thick with the smell of roasted beans, cinnamon pastries, and too many conversations squeezed into too small a space. Emily Carter sat at a corner table, her old laptop humming loudly, as if protesting its own survival. She had ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a small black coffee, and nursed it for almost an hour. Her savings were slipping through her fingers like sand. Each sip was stretched thin, each minute of free Wi-Fi a lifeline. "Refill," the barista asked, pausing beside her table. Emily smiled sheepishly. "I think I'll pass, just savoring what I've got." The barista gave her a sympathetic nod before moving on. Emily bent over her laptop, editing her resume again, when a voice carried through the din of the cafe, low, clipped, unmistakably familiar. "I'll take an Americano to go." Her head snapped up. There he was, Alexander Harrison, but not in his sharp-tailored armor. Today he wore dark jeans, a navy sweater, and an expression that shifted from casual to thunderous the moment their eyes met. Emily froze, her heart hammering. Of all the coffee shops in Brooklyn, Alex's jaw tightened. He reached for his order, clearly intending to leave without a word. But the cafe was too crowded. A man with a cane blocked the narrow path to the door, moving slowly, each step deliberate. For a brief, almost comical moment, the all-powerful CEO of Harrison & Co. was trapped in line like everyone else. Emily swallowed hard. She could have kept her head down, let him walk out. But her pride raw from 2 sleepless nights burned hotter than her fear. "You've got to be kidding me," Alex muttered, his voice sharp enough for her to hear. Emily snapped her laptop shut. "Relax. I live in this neighborhood. Not everything revolves around you." Several heads turned. The cafe, always eager for drama, grew quieter. Alex turned to her fully now, eyes narrowing. Tell me you're not following me. Emily's cheeks flushed, but her stubbornness flared. Following you. Please. I'd rather follow a stray pigeon through Times Square. At least pigeons don't fire people for laughing. A muffled chuckle came from a table nearby. Alex leaned closer, lowering his voice. You humiliated me in front of Brighton. Do you understand the damage you caused? Emily crossed her arms. Oh, I understand. You lost $50 million because you couldn't check your shoe before walking into a meeting. That's not on me. For the first time, Alex seemed caught off guard. His lips parted as if to argue, but no retort came. The elderly man with the cane still blocked his exit, leaving him no choice but to remain standing in front of her. Emily tilted her head, feigning innocence. So, how's the shoe today? Tissue-free. His glare could have frozen lava. And yet, just for a flicker, something else passed across his face, something dangerously close to amusement. You think this is funny? He asked, voice low. I think, Emily said, choosing her words carefully, that sometimes life has a twisted sense of humor, and maybe you're not as untouchable as you pretend to be. Their eyes locked. The tension between them was electric, sharp enough to cut, hot enough to burn. Around them, the cafe seemed to lean in, hungry for more. The man with the cane finally shuffled out the door, clearing the way. Alex could have left. He should have left. But instead, he surprised them both. Sit, he ordered, nodding toward the chair opposite Emily. Emily blinked. Excuse me. Sit, he repeated, his tone softer now, but no less commanding. We need to talk. Emily hesitated. Part of her wanted to tell him to get lost, but another part, the same stubborn streak that had carried her from Montana to Manhattan, wanted to face him head on. With a sigh, she gestured to the empty chair. Fine, but if you start yelling, I'm throwing my coffee at you. Alex sat, the cafe chair looking comically small beneath his tall frame. He set his cup on the table, then studied her, his gaze sharp but not entirely cruel. You're broke, he said finally. Emily bristled. That's none of your business. You've been here for over an hour on one coffee, Alex continued, analytical as ever. Your laptop's older than my first internship, and you're updating resumes in a cafe instead of an office. Her throat tightened. He had read her life like a ledger. So, what you're going to write me up for poverty now? For the first time, Alex leaned back, exhaling slowly. His arrogance dimmed, just slightly. No, I just needed to confirm something. Emily frowned. Confirm what? But he didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a measured sip of his coffee, eyes still fixed on her, as though weighing a decision that even he wasn't sure about. The silence stretched between them, uncomfortable yet strangely charged. Finally, Emily broke it. Well, if you've got something to say it. Otherwise, let me get back to failing at job hunting. Alex's mouth twitched almost a smile, but not quite. You really don't know when to keep quiet, do you? Emily shrugged. Guess that's why you fired me. For the first time since that disastrous boardroom, Alexander Harrison didn't look like the Frost King of finance. He looked human, irritated, conflicted, maybe even amused. It was a dangerous crack in the armor. For a long moment, the only sounds at the cafe table were the hiss of the espresso machine and the low murmur of conversations around them. Alexander Harrison leaned forward, his hands wrapped around his cup, as if steadying himself for something unpleasant. I didn't come here to fight with you, he said finally, his voice lower, measured. I came because I need something. And God help me, you might be the only person who can give it. Emily Carter raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Me, the woman you had escorted out of your office 2 days ago. That's rich. I don't find this amusing, Alex shot back, his expression tight. The Brighton deal isn't completely dead. They agreed to give us one more chance. A dinner meeting, informal, more personal, but he hesitated, running a hand through his hair, an uncharacteristically human gesture. They expect the same team present, which means you. Emily blinked. Wait, you told them I was fired. You had security throw me out. They think you had a Medical issue. His lips tightened, as though saying the words left a bitter taste. A sudden reaction. My father convinced them. If you show up, looking composed, professional, it will prove the story true. Then we can salvage the deal. Emily stared at him, stunned. Of all the scenarios she had imagined in her sleepless nights, Alex begging for her return had never made the list. So, let me get this straight, she said slowly. You want me to sit at some fancy dinner, keep my mouth shut, and pretend I'm still part of your perfect little empire? Yes. Her laugh was sharp, humorless. Do you realize how insane that sounds? You humiliated me. Alex, you fired me in front of a dozen executives, and you humiliated me in front of Brighton. He snapped, his voice rising before he caught himself. He drew a breath, steadying. Look, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to help me fix this. Emily leaned back in her chair, folding her arms. The weight of his request pressed down on her chest. Part of her wanted to throw her coffee in his face and walk out. He had treated her like dirt, dismissed her as though she were disposable. But another part, the part that counted the coins in her wallet before buying groceries, whispered of survival. Her rent was due in less than 2 weeks. She had $17 left in her checking account. She could practically hear her mother's voice urging her to come home. And yet, here was Alexander Harrison, offering her a strange, risky lifeline. What's in it for me? She asked, her tone sharper than she intended. His eyes flicked over her, reading her the way he might read a financial report. Then, without a word, he pulled out his phone, opened his banking app, and turned the screen toward her. $5,000. Wired to you the moment the dinner is over, plus a personal recommendation letter. Emily's breath caught. 5,000. More money than she had ever seen in her account at once. It could cover rent for months, buy her time to figure out her next step. But her pride bristled. She didn't want to be his pawn, his cover-up. She didn't want to sell her dignity for a stack of bills. She looked at him, his perfect posture, his calculating eyes. For once, she saw not just the ruthless CEO, but the man beneath the one grasping at control, afraid to lose what he had built. Her heart thudded with conflict. You think everything can be solved with money? She whispered. His jaw tightened. Money is the language people understand in this city. Not me. Their gazes locked, a clash of worlds, his polished power against her stubborn grit. Emily's mind spun. If she said no, she would walk out with nothing but her pride and maybe a bus ticket back to Montana. If she said yes, she'd be complicit in his deception, a puppet in a play she never auditioned for. She imagined calling her mother, admitting defeat. She imagined her father's voice, urging her not to settle. And she imagined herself at that dinner table, trying to sit still, trying not to laugh, while pretending she belonged. Finally, she exhaled. Fine. I'll do it. Alex's shoulders dropped slightly, relief flickering across his face. But, Emily added quickly, her voice firm, there are conditions. His brows rose. Conditions 1, she said, holding up a finger. You don't get to treat me like I'm invisible. If I'm going to sit there, you acknowledge me as part of your team. Not a joke, not a liability. He nodded slowly. 2, she continued. You don't get to order me around outside of that dinner. I'm not your assistant. I'm not your employee. I'm doing this as a favor, nothing more. Alex's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but something close. You drive a hard bargain for someone with $17 in her account. Her face burned. How do you? He tapped his temple lightly. It's my job to notice details. Emily clenched her fists. Then notice this detail. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Alex leaned back, his eyes never leaving hers. Deal? Emily gathered her things, her heart pounding with equal parts dread and defiance. She didn't know if she had just saved herself or stepped into a trap she couldn't escape. Either way, tomorrow night, She would be sitting across from Alexander Harrison once again. And nothing would ever be the same. The black car pulled up to the curb outside Emily's building at exactly 6 o'clock. The driver stepped out, crisp in a dark uniform, opening the rear door with a practiced flourish. Emily hesitated at the top of the steps, clutching the borrowed dress bag tighter. That morning, a package had arrived with her name on it, a deep emerald cocktail dress that fit her as if it had been tailored just for her, along with a pair of silver heels that felt far too glamorous for someone who had lived on instant noodles for the past week. She'd stared at the outfit for hours, debating whether to wear it, but now, standing under the glow of the street lamp, she had no choice. The car door opened again, and there he was, Alexander Harrison, impeccable in a charcoal suit, his tie perfectly knotted. His gaze swept over her, pausing just long enough to register surprise before his face returned to its usual calm mask. "You clean up well," he said, offering a hand to steady her as she descended the steps. "Don't sound so shocked," Emily muttered, though her cheeks flushed. Inside the car, the silence between them was thick, punctuated only by the hum of Manhattan traffic. Alex tapped on a tablet, briefing her like a general before battle. "The dinner is at Le Chanson, 3 Michelin stars. The Brightons will arrive at 7 sharp. Conversation will focus on market expansion. You'll sit quietly, smile when appropriate, and for the love of God, no outbursts." Emily rolled her eyes. "I'm not a child, Alex." "No," he replied, glancing at her. "But you're unpredictable. And in my world, unpredictable equals dangerous." Her lips curved into a small, defiant smile. "In my world, unpredictable equals interesting." He didn't respond, but she caught the flicker of something curiosity, amusement in his eyes before he turned back to the tablet. The restaurant was a temple of elegance, crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, and servers who moved with balletic precision. Emily felt the weight of every glance as she followed Alex to the private dining room, her heels clicking against marble floors. The Brightons were already seated, Mr. and Mrs. Brighton, both in their 60s, dressed with understated wealth. Their smiles were polite, but Emily sensed the skepticism lingering beneath. "Mr. Harrison," Mr. Brighton said, rising to shake his hand. Then, turning to Emily, "And this must be the young woman from the boardroom. How are you feeling?" Emily summoned every ounce of poise she had. "Much better. Thank you. It was an unfortunate reaction to a new medication. Very embarrassing. Mrs. Brighton chuckled kindly. "These things happen, dear. I once fainted in the middle of a gala auction. My husband had to carry me out past half of Manhattan society." Laughter rippled around the table, easing the tension. For a while, everything went according to plan. Alex spoke confidently about projections. "Mr. Brighton asked pointed questions. Mrs. Brighton commented on the wine list. Emily stayed quiet, nodding at appropriate moments, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She thought, maybe I can pull this off after all. Then she saw it. Dangling from the ornate floral centerpiece was a cockroach, small, but unmistakable, making its way down a nearly invisible thread, directly toward Mr. Brighton's crystal wine glass. Emily's eyes widened. Panic surged. She glanced at Alex, who was mid-sentence, oblivious. She looked back at the roach, now inches from the rim. 3 choices flashed through her mind. 1. Stay silent. Let Mr. Brighton drink roach wine. 2. Interrupt the most important dinner of Alex's career. 3. Handle it herself. Her instincts chose for her. Emily leaned forward, napkin in hand, and tried to swat the creature away discreetly, but the roach, startled, dropped plop straight into the glass of Bordeaux. Time slowed. Mr. Brighton lifted his glass, still focused on Alex's explanation of quarterly growth. "No!" Emily burst out, lunging across the table. Her hand knocked the glass, sending a wave of deep red wine cascading across the pristine white tablecloth. The The momentum carried her forward, and suddenly she was sprawled halfway across the table, face to face with a very startled Mr. Brighton. The room went silent. Forks froze. There was a roach. Emily stammered, her voice trembling. She pointed at the overturned glass, where the insect now floated in a small crimson pool. I didn't want you to drink it. For one unbearable moment, no one moved. Then Mrs. Brighton let out a soft giggle. Oh, Harold. She just saved you from swallowing a cockroach. Her husband blinked, looked down at the evidence, and then unexpectedly began to laugh. Well, I'll be damned. In 40 years of business dinners, I've never had anyone throw themselves across a table to protect me from a bug. Emily flushed scarlet, trying to dab at the spreading stain with her napkin. I'm so sorry. I just panicked nonsense. Mrs. Brighton interrupted, smiling warmly. That was the bravest, and frankly the most thoughtful thing I've seen in ages. The waitstaff swooped in, clearing glasses, replacing linens with swift precision. Within minutes, the table looked perfect again, except for the lingering laughter. Across the table, Alex sat frozen, his expression caught somewhere between horror and disbelief. His empire balanced on appearances, and Emily had just turned the evening into a comedy of errors. And yet, when Mr. Brighton raised his fresh glass in a toast, his eyes sparkled. To unexpected heroes, he said, and to companies that hire people willing to leap across tables for their clients. Glasses clinked, laughter returned. The conversation flowed even more freely than before. Emily, still flushed and trembling, risked a glance at Alex. For the first time, the Frost King of Finance seemed undone. His mask of perfection cracked wide open, replaced by something raw astonishment, grudging admiration, maybe even respect. He leaned closer, his voice low, meant only for her. You just saved a $70 million deal with a cockroach. Emily managed a shaky smile. Well, better than tissue, right? For a moment, his lips curved upward, not fully, not quite, but enough. It was the closest thing Emily had ever seen to Alexander Harrison smiling. The city glittered outside the tinted windows of the town car as it hummed through late-night traffic. Manhattan had a way of looking softer at this hour, the roar of the day giving way to a gentler rhythm. The neon signs still pulsed, but the sidewalks were thinner, the voices quieter. Inside, silence filled the car. Emily Carter sat with her hands folded tightly in her lap, her heart still racing from the chaos of the dinner. The scent of expensive cologne and leather seats surrounded her. Yet she felt strangely out of place, like a child playing dress-up in someone else's world. She risked a glance at Alexander Harrison. He was staring out the window, his jaw tight, his tie loosened ever so slightly. For once, he didn't look like the Frost King of Finance. He looked tired. Finally, he spoke. Do you realize what you did back there? Emily bristled, expecting anger. Yes, I embarrassed you. Again. But when he turned to face her, his expression wasn't cold fury. It was something she hadn't seen before, something almost human. No, he said softly. You saved the deal. Brighton signed the papers, and they added an additional clause expanding their investment, $70 million. Emily blinked. Wait, you mean... He gave a small, disbelieving shake of his head. I can't explain it. They were impressed, not by me, not by the numbers, by you, by what you did. Her cheeks warmed, throwing myself across a table like a lunatic. His lips twitched, protecting a client. With complete disregard for appearances, for a moment, silence lingered again. But it wasn't uncomfortable this time. Emily leaned back, exhaling. Well, guess I'm full of surprises. Alex studied her, his gaze steady. Then, unexpectedly, he asked, Why did you come here to New York? I mean, why leave Montana? The question caught her off guard. She hesitated, fingers tracing the seam of her dress. You want the truth or the version I tell in interviews? Truth, he said, leaning back, his voice quieter now. Emily swallowed, her throat tight. My dad died when I was 16. Heart attack, completely unexpected. She paused, her voice thickening. Before he died, he used to tell me stories about New York. He'd never even been here, but he read about it, watched movies, imagined it like it was magic, a place where anything could happen. Alex didn't interrupt. He just listened, his sharp eyes softening. After he died, my mom, she just shut down, stopped dreaming, stopped believing in possibilities. Everyone back home did. Really? It was like the whole town accepted that life was small and predictable, and that was all it would ever be. Emily's eyes glistened, but she blinked quickly, refusing to let the tears fall. I couldn't accept that. I wanted to see if Dad was right, that maybe this city really could change everything. Her words lingered in the air, raw and unpolished. For the first time, Alex looked away. His hand tightened briefly on his knee before he spoke. My father started Harrison & Co. With nothing but a desk and a rented office and a loan he could barely repay. He built it with blood and sweat. Every day of my life, I've been reminded of that. And every day since I took over, I've felt like I had to prove I was worthy of it. Emily turned her head toward him, surprised at the vulnerability in his voice. He never says it outright, Alex continued. But I know what he thinks, that if I make one mistake, one wrong move, everyone will say I only have this because of my name, that I didn't earn it. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up in a way that startled her. So, yes, I demand perfection, because anything less feels like failure. Emily studied him, seeing past the armor for the first time. Beneath the crisp suits and the icy demeanor was a man carrying a weight so heavy it had pressed the warmth right out of him. You know, she said softly, sometimes imperfection isn't weakness. Sometimes it's what makes people trust you. His eyes flicked back to hers, sharp again, as though her words had touched something he didn't want touched. You think I should laugh off toilet paper on my shoe in front of Brighton? He asked dryly. Emily smiled faintly. Maybe not laugh, but own it. People don't want to work with robots. Alex, they want to work with people. People who can make mistakes and still hold their head high. For a long time, he just stared at her, as if trying to decide whether to dismiss her words or believe them. The car slowed, pulling up in front of her building. The cracked steps and flickering street lamp looked even more out of place compared to the luxury she had just left behind. Emily gathered her clutch, her heart oddly heavy. She had expected Alex to scoff, to brush off her story. Instead, he had listened, really listened, and he had shared something real in return. Thanks for the ride, she said quietly. He nodded, but when she opened the door, his voice stopped her. Emily. She turned. For about 10 seconds back in that boardroom, he said, his voice low, almost reluctant. When you laughed, I forgot to be afraid. Her breath caught. She opened her mouth to respond, but he looked away, the mask sliding back into place. Good night, he said simply. Emily stepped out into the cool night air, her heels clicking against the pavement. She climbed the steps to her apartment, her heart racing with questions she wasn't ready to answer. Behind her, the car lingered for a moment before pulling away, swallowed by the city lights. And for the first time since she had arrived in New York, Emily felt that maybe the cracks in someone else's armor were beginning to show. The morning light slanted across Emily's tiny kitchen, highlighting the chipped edges of the counter and the pile of unpaid bills stacked neatly under a magnet on the fridge. She sat at the wobbly table, sipping cheap instant coffee from a cracked mug, trying not to think about how long $17 could last in New York. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered, Emily Carter. The voice on the other end was unmistakable calm, clipped, authoritative. Alexander Harrison. Her stomach dropped. How did you get my number? I have resources, he said simply. I need to see you. Today, My office? 10 o'clock? Emily nearly laughed. Your office. You fired me, remember? This is different. The line went dead before she could argue. By 10 o'clock, Emily found herself once again in the gleaming lobby of Harrison & Co. The receptionist looked at her with raised brows but said nothing as security escorted her up. Walking through those polished glass doors again felt surreal, like returning to the scene of a crime. Alex was standing by the window of his office when she entered, his suit crisp, his posture rigid. The skyline of Manhattan stretched behind him like a painted backdrop. You came, he said, as if he had doubted she would. Curiosity kills cats. You know, she muttered. He turned, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. Sit. Emily hesitated, then lowered herself into the leather seat. All right. What now? Another dinner where I pretend not to exist. No, Alex said, his tone steady. This time, something permanent. She frowned. Permanent. He clasped his hands together, his gaze unwavering. Be my executive secretary. The words hung in the air, heavy, unbelievable. Emily blinked. Excuse me. You have instincts I can't teach, Alex continued. You read situations differently. The Brightons trusted you because you acted like a human being, not a machine. I need that balance on my team. I need you. Her heart thudded. On one hand, it was everything she had dreamed of, an actual position, a chance to prove herself in the city that had nearly broken her. On the other, it felt dangerous, too close, too entangled. She swallowed hard. You fired me in front of half your company, and now you're asking me to come back as your secretary. Do you realize how insane that sounds? I do, he admitted, his jaw tightening. But the fact remains, you're the reason Brighton is investing. My father noticed. The board noticed. If I want to move forward, I need you here. Emily's throat tightened. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, to accept the salary, the security, the validation that she wasn't just a small-town girl out of her depth, but another part whispered caution. Why me? She asked softly. Out of all the polished professionals you could hire, why me for the first time? Alex hesitated. His gaze softened, though only slightly. Because you're not afraid of me, and because when you laughed in that boardroom, I remembered what it felt like not to be perfect. Her chest ached. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe this was more than convenience. But she couldn't risk being a pawn again. If I do this, she said carefully, there have to be rules. He raised an eyebrow. Rules? Yes. Clear boundaries. I'll be your secretary. But that's all. No blurred lines. No. Whatever this is that keeps happening between us. His lips curved faintly, but he didn't interrupt. Rule 1, Emily continued, her voice firm. Respect. You don't get to humiliate me in front of your board again. Agreed. Rule 2, work hours are work hours. If you expect me to be available 24/7 like some kind of robot, you'll be disappointed. Alex inclined his head. Noted. And Rule 3, she added, her voice softening. This job is about my future, not just your reputation. I won't be your cover story. I won't lie for you again. Silence filled the office. For a moment, Emily thought he might refuse. But then he leaned back in his chair, studying her with something close to admiration. You drive a harder bargain than most CEOs I know, he said finally. Emily straightened, folding her hands in her lap. So, do we have a deal? Alex's eyes locked on hers. We do. Her chest tightened, a mix of triumph and dread. This was it, the second chance she hadn't expected. The new arrangement that could either save her career or ruin her life. She rose to her feet, extending a hand. He took it, his grip firm, his gaze unwavering. Welcome back to Harrison & Co., Miss Carter. As she walked out of his office, Emily's mind spun with questions. Was she making the biggest mistake of her life, or the smartest move she'd ever dared? Only time would tell. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and Emily Carter stepped into the hushed executive floor of Harrison & Co. She carried her tablet tucked against her chest, her heels clicking softly on the marble. It had been 2 weeks since she accepted Alex's offer to become his secretary. In that time, she had learned 2 things about him. He thrived on control, and he hated surprises, which made the sight in the reception area all the more unsettling. 2 women waited near the glass wall overlooking the city. One was striking in her refinement silver hair, styled in a perfect chignon, a pearl necklace resting against a tailored navy dress. Everything about her radiated authority, the kind of confidence born from old money and unshakable status. The other, younger, stood with an elegance that felt practiced, tall, blonde, perfectly groomed, wearing a pale pink dress that looked as though it had walked straight off a Fifth Avenue runway. Her smile was poised, her eyes calculating. The receptionist leaned toward Emily and whispered, "Mrs. Victoria Harrison and Miss Charlotte Whitmore." Emily's pulse quickened. She had heard the names before. Victoria, Alex's mother, formidable in every sense, and Charlotte, the woman's society, pages often mentioned as the ideal match for Alexander Harrison. Emily squared her shoulders, smoothing her skirt. "Okay, Carter, you've faced worse. You've faced cockroaches at Michelin-starred restaurants. You can handle this, Mrs. Harrison," Emily said, stepping forward with her most professional smile. "Welcome to Harrison & Co. I'm Emily Carter, Mr. Harrison's executive secretary. May I assist you while he finishes his meeting?" Victoria's gaze swept over Emily from head to toe, sharp as a scalpel. "Executive secretary," she repeated, her voice cool. "And before this, what were you? A receptionist, a typist?" Emily held her smile. "Before this, I was finishing my degree in Montana, but here I'm responsible for ensuring Mr. Harrison's schedule and operations run smoothly." Charlotte let out a delicate laugh, the kind meant to dismiss without sounding unkind. "Montana, how quaint." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "We've come to see Alexander. Surely he can spare 10 minutes for his mother." Emily glanced through the glass wall. Alex was indeed on a call, his posture taut, his tone sharp. She turned back. "I'm afraid he's with international clients at the moment. It's a time-sensitive matter." He asked not to be interrupted. Charlotte's lips curved. "Oh, I'm sure he wouldn't mind for family." She stepped closer, her perfume sweet and overwhelming. "We've known each other since we were children. Our families have been close for generations." Emily didn't flinch. "Then I'm certain he'll be pleased to see you, but not until he's finished." Victoria's expression tightened, but Emily met her gaze evenly. She had faced Alex's fury before. She could face his mother's. "Tell me, Miss Carter," Victoria said finally, her voice laced with ice. "Do you know what it means to be part of a family like ours? To uphold tradition? To make sacrifices for reputation and legacy?" Emily inhaled slowly, choosing her words with care. "I know what it means to work hard for something you believe in, to protect it when others doubt you. Mr. Harrison leads this company with those values. I do my part to support him. That's what matters." For the first time, something flickered across Victoria's face. Not approval, but perhaps a grudging acknowledgement. Before the silence could stretch, Alex's office door opened. He stepped out, surprise flashing across his face when he saw his mother and Charlotte. "Mother," he said, kissing Victoria's cheek politely. "Charlotte? What a surprise!" Charlotte beamed, gliding forward to touch his arm. "We were hoping to steal you for lunch. It's been far too long." Emily caught the subtle tension in Alex's jaw, the way his eyes darted briefly to her before settling back on Charlotte. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Emily interjected smoothly, her tone respectful but firm. "Mr. Harrison's lunch meeting with the Brighton team was moved up. We'll need to leave in 15 minutes to make it across town." It was a lie, and Emily knew it, but the flicker of relief in Alex's eyes told her she had chosen correctly. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. Brighton can surely wait for family. Emily met her gaze steadily. The Brighton account is worth $70 million to the company. I'm sure you understand the importance of honoring commitments. The silence was sharp. Charlotte's smile faltered. Finally, Victoria adjusted her pearl necklace. Her tone clipped. Very well. Another time, then. Of course, Alex said quickly. We'll arrange something soon. As the two women swept toward the elevator, Charlotte cast one last look at Emily, a mixture of disdain and curiosity. When the doors closed, Alex turned to Emily, his shoulders relaxing. There was no Brighton meeting today. Was there? Not even close, Emily admitted. He studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed a low, genuine sound that filled the office like sunlight breaking through clouds. You have no idea how much I owe you, he said. Emily allowed herself a small smile. Actually, I do. Lunch, somewhere expensive. Consider it combat pay. His grin widened, rare and disarming. Deal? And for the first time since stepping into Harrison & Co., Emily felt she wasn't just surviving. She was standing her ground. The invitation had arrived in a heavy cream envelope, the kind embossed with gold lettering that practically shouted old money. Emily Carter had stared at it for nearly an hour before summoning the courage to open it. The Harrison Foundation Annual Charity Gala. Black tie. Waldorf Astoria. She had never been to the Waldorf. The fanciest event she'd attended back in Montana was the county fair pie-eating contest. Now, she was expected to glide into one of the city's most exclusive rooms on the arm of Alexander Harrison himself. The dress, of course, had arrived that morning courtesy of Alex's mysterious shopping service. Midnight blue satin that hugged her frame without being revealing, paired with understated pearl earrings. Emily had whispered to her reflection, "Don't trip, don't spill anything, don't breathe too loud." When the town car pulled up to the Waldorf that evening, Emily's hands trembled as she adjusted her clutch. Alex stepped out first, impossibly composed in his tuxedo. He turned, offering his hand to her. "You'll do fine," he murmured, almost as if he sensed the storm of nerves inside her. She slipped her hand into his, grounding herself. "I feel like a fraud." "You look like you belong here," he said simply, leading her inside. The ballroom was a sea of glittering gowns, polished shoes, and crystal chandeliers that bathed everything in golden light. Waiters glided with trays of champagne flutes. Conversations hummed with the cadence of wealth and power. Emily kept close to Alex, her heart thumping as eyes followed them. She heard the whispers. "Who's she?" "The new secretary from Montana." "Did you hear?" They hadn't been inside 10 minutes before Charlotte Whitmore appeared, as though conjured by the very scent of competition. "Alex," Charlotte said warmly, leaning in to kiss the air beside his cheek. She sparkled in a gown of pale silver, her diamond necklace winking beneath the chandeliers. "It's been far too long." Her eyes shifted to Emily, cool and assessing. "And you must be the assistant." "Emily Carter," Emily said, extending her hand. "Nice to meet you." Charlotte's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Montana, isn't it? How fascinating. You must find all this overwhelming." Emily smiled politely. "It's different." "Yes. But people are people, no matter the room." Charlotte's brows arched, as if amused by the simplicity of the answer. Indeed, though some rooms require a certain refinement. Before Emily could reply, a board member joined them, launching into a discussion about the Brighton expansion. Emily stood quietly, listening. When the conversation turned to global markets, Charlotte leaned close to Emily, her voice dripping with condescension. "Don't worry, dear. These talks must sound like another language to you." Emily's lips curved faintly. "On the contrary, I find them fascinating. Did you know Brighton's West Coast projections are based on a flawed transportation model? I read their report last week." Charlotte blinked, momentarily thrown off. Alex's eyes flicked to Emily in surprise. "I wasn't aware." Charlotte stammered. Emily kept her voice even. Professional. It's subtle, but if they don't account for rising freight costs, the margins shrink considerably. The board member chuckled. Sharp eye, Miss Carter. You may be right. Charlotte's smile faltered, and for the first time, Emily felt the ground steady beneath her feet. As the evening wore on, Emily moved through the room more confidently. She introduced herself with warmth, asked thoughtful questions, even laughed genuinely with Mrs. Brighton when recounting the Roach incident in the most graceful way she could. Charlotte, meanwhile, tried repeatedly to corner Alex, her tone just a shade too familiar. Emily noticed Alex's polite but detached responses, his eyes drifting more often toward her. At one point, during a lull in the music, Charlotte approached again, holding 2 glasses of champagne. She offered one to Alex, then turned sweetly to Emily. And what about you, Miss Carter? Do you drink champagne, or is that too sophisticated for Montana tastes? Emily accepted the glass with steady hands, her voice calm. Back home, we drink whatever brings people together. Sometimes that's champagne, sometimes it's black coffee at the local diner. The drink doesn't matter, the company does. Her words hung in the air. Several nearby guests, clearly listening, murmured in agreement. Charlotte's cheeks colored. Alex, hiding a smile, raised his glass toward Emily. To good company. Then, their eyes met, and for a flicker of a moment, something passed between them, something Charlotte noticed, if the tightening of her jaw was any indication. Later, when the orchestra struck up a waltz, Alex extended a hand to Emily. Dance. She hesitated. I'm not sure I remember how. I'll lead, he said, his tone gentler than usual. As they moved across the polished floor, Emily's nerves slowly eased. She wasn't perfect. She stepped on his shoe once, earning a quiet chuckle, but she didn't collapse, didn't falter. And for the first time that night, she felt less like an outsider and more like herself. You handled Charlotte well, Alex said softly as they turned. Emily gave a small shrug. She doesn't scare me. She scares most people. Maybe that's the problem, Emily replied. People let themselves be intimidated. I learned a long time ago not to. Alex studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. As the waltz came to an end, the applause rising around them, Emily caught sight of Charlotte watching from the edge of the floor, her smile brittle, her eyes sharp. And for the first time, Emily didn't feel like the girl from Montana pretending to belong. She felt like a woman carving out her place, one calm, steady word at a time. The morning began with an unusual hush across the Harrison & Co. offices. Phones rang less often. Conversations at cubicles were tense whispers instead of brisk chatter. Even the hum of the elevators felt different, like the building itself was holding its breath. By the time Emily Carter arrived at her desk outside Alex's office, she knew something was wrong. Her inbox was flooded with flagged messages. The financial news ticker on her screen screamed with red headlines. Harrison & Co. Under fire, questionable dealings. Exposed, her stomach lurched. She grabbed the phone, dialing Alex's extension. Already seen it, came his clipped reply. Boardroom, 10 minutes. When she entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Executives sat stiffly around the long mahogany table, each clutching papers and tablets as if bracing for war. At the head sat Alexander Harrison, calm on the surface but with a storm in his eyes. This is nothing but speculation. One executive snapped, waving a printout, but the market reacts to perception. Our stock is already sliding. We can't ignore it. Another countered. Clients will panic. Emily slid into a seat near the edge, her tablet ready. She listened, absorbing every detail. The rumor, it seemed, centered on a recent overseas investment, a logistics firm accused of inflating numbers. Though Harrison & Co. had only a minor stake, the press had spun it as a sign of reckless judgment. The arguments grew louder, the executives talking over one another until Emily felt her pulse quicken with frustration. They were drowning in panic, not solutions. She cleared her throat. Excuse me. The room went still. 20 pairs of eyes turned to her, surprise flashing. Secretaries weren't supposed to speak in board meetings, but Alex didn't silence her. He only tilted his head slightly, a signal to continue. Emily steadied her voice. The article hinges on the assumption that we ignored due diligence, but if we release the internal audit we conducted before approving the investment, it will prove otherwise. Transparency can undercut the speculation before it grows. Silence followed. Then, slowly, one of the senior partners nodded. She's right. We have the audit. It's airtight, another added. We could package it with a client-facing statement, emphasize our commitment to oversight. The energy in the room shifted. Panic gave way to possibility. Alex leaned back, his gaze fixed on Emily. Make it happen, he said. And just like that, the chaos had direction. The next hours blurred into motion. Emily coordinated with compliance officers, drafted language for the press team, and fielded frantic calls. She moved between departments like she'd been doing it for years, not weeks. By afternoon, the press release went live. The audit documents, stamped and verified, were uploaded to the company's site. Within hours, the bleeding slowed, the stock began to stabilize. In the evening, as the executives regrouped, Alex stood at the head of the table once more. His expression was unreadable, but his words carried weight. Today could have broken us, he said, but we held. Thanks to quick thinking and clear strategy. His eyes found Emily's. Miss Carter, you did excellent work. Murmurs rippled across the room. Public acknowledgement from Alexander Harrison was rarer than gold. Emily felt her face warm, but she kept her composure, offering only a small nod. For the first time, she felt she wasn't just surviving Harrison & Co., she was part of it. Later that night, after most of the staff had left, Emily returned to her desk to collect her things. She paused when she heard voices drifting from Alex's office. The door was slightly ajar. Crisis averted, Alex was saying, his tone clipped but lighter than usual. Another voice, one of the senior partners, replied, "And your little secretary pulled it off." Who knew? Emily's chest tightened. She edged closer, straining to hear. "She's useful," Alex said, unpolished, but useful. "The board likes her presence makes me look human. For now. She's exactly what we need." The words landed like a stone in her stomach. Useful, not valued, not respected, not trusted, just a pawn. Emily backed away from the door, her hands trembling. The praise in the boardroom, the rare smile during the gala, the quiet confessions in the car, had all of it been a performance? Had he only kept her close to serve his image? She grabbed her bag, her throat tight, her chest burning with something between anger and heartbreak. For the first time since stepping into Harrison & Co., Emily Carter wondered if she had made a terrible mistake trusting Alexander Harrison. And for the first time, she wasn't sure she could forgive herself if she had. The following week at Harrison & Co. moved with the same relentless rhythm as always. Phones ringing, meetings stacked back to back, the hum of the city pulsing outside the glass windows. Yet, for Emily Carter, everything felt different. She did her work with precision, answering calls, drafting memos, arranging Alex's schedule. But the warmth that had once crept into her interactions with him, the sly humor, the occasional spark of connection was gone. She was polite, efficient, professional, nothing more. When Alex asked for coffee, she delivered it silently. When he called her into meetings, she spoke only when necessary. He noticed. By the third day, his patience thinned. "You've barely looked at me all week," he said one evening as she handed him a folder. "I've been busy," Emily replied, her tone even, busy avoiding me. Her eyes flicked to his, then away. "I'm here to do my job. That's all." Alex's jaw tightened. He wanted to demand more, to peel back the walls she'd suddenly raised. But he forced himself still, afraid that pushing too hard would confirm the fear already clawing at his chest, that he was losing her before he ever truly had her. Emily walked home that night through the chilly autumn air, her coat pulled tightly around her, The city glowed with neon and headlights, but she felt like a shadow drifting among them. He called me useful. The words replayed endlessly, like a cruel refrain. She had wanted to believe she mattered to him, to the company, to something bigger than herself. But what if she was just a tool, polished and placed at the table for effect? She thought of Montana, of her mother's gentle voice urging her to come home. Life there was smaller, quieter, but at least it was honest. No one pretended. No one used you for appearances. Yet leaving now felt like surrender. She had clawed her way too far to quit. Inside her apartment, she dropped her bag and sank onto the bed. The dress from the gala still hung in the corner, a shimmering reminder of how far she had stepped into his world and how dangerous it felt to stand there. Her chest ached with conflicting truths. She didn't trust him, but she still cared for him. Against every ounce of reason, she cared. She pressed her palms to her eyes, whispering into the quiet, "What am I doing?" Across town, Alex sat alone in his office. The skyline stretched before him, glittering and indifferent. A half-empty glass of scotch rested on the desk beside a stack of reports he hadn't read. He had spent years building walls, precision, control, reputation. Nothing got through. That was how he survived, how he led. And then Emily Carter had laughed in a boardroom, shattering the silence he'd carried his entire adult life. Now, he couldn't stop thinking about her. He thought of the way she stood up to his mother without flinching, the way she disarmed Charlotte at the gala with nothing but honesty, the way she had thrown herself across a table to save a client from humiliation, and the way she now avoided his eyes, her voice cool, her smile absent. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. He had told the partners she was useful. The word had come easily, an armor against showing too much. But the truth, the dangerous truth was that she was more than useful. She unsettled him, challenged him, made him feel something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Love. The word alone terrified him. Love meant weakness. Weakness meant risk. And risk was something Alexander Harrison had spent his life eradicating. He poured another glass of scotch, his hands tightening around it. "Get control," he muttered to himself. "Don't let her undo you." But even as he said it, he knew it was already too late. The distance between them grew in the days that followed. At meetings, Alex found his gaze drawn to her, but Emily kept her eyes fixed on the notes before her. When she spoke, her words were efficient, stripped of warmth. It was unbearable. One evening, after most of the staff had left, he called her into his office. She entered, tablet in hand, her posture crisp. "You wanted me?" she asked. He studied her, searching for the right words. For once, his flawless vocabulary failed him. "Emily, have I done something?" Her fingers tightened on the tablet. "Does it matter?" "Yes," he said firmly. "It matters." Her eyes lifted to his, then, sharp with pain. "You don't see me. Alex, you see what I can do for you? What I make you look like in front of your board. But me, the person behind the desk, the woman from Montana who came here with nothing. You don't see her?" The silence stretched, raw and heavy. Alex opened his mouth, then closed it. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that he saw her more clearly than anyone, but the words tangled with pride and fear. To admit them would be to surrender control. So, he said nothing. Emily nodded once, as though that silence was all the answer she needed. She turned and left the office, the door clicking softly behind her. Alex sat frozen, the sound echoing in his chest like a verdict. For the first time, the man who controlled everything realized he was losing the one thing he couldn't control at all. The night city glowed outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Alex's office. The lights of Manhattan shimmered like a galaxy scattered across the earth. Inside, silence stretched thick between them. Emily Carter stood by the door, clutching her bag, ready to leave for the evening. "Emily." Alex's voice stopped her. It was lower than usual, lacking its usual sharpness. "Stay a moment." She hesitated, then turned slowly. What is it? Another meeting to prep? Another dinner where I'm supposed to smile and nod? No, he said, rising from his chair. His tuxedo jacket was draped over the backrest. His shirt sleeves rolled, tie loosened. For once, he didn't look like the untouchable CEO. He looked like a man weighed down by something he couldn't contain. I need to tell you the truth, he said. Her pulse quickened. What about why I asked you back, he said, taking a step closer. Why I made you my secretary. Emily braced herself, every nerve taut. At first, yes, Alex admitted, his jaw tightening. It was strategy. Brighton trusted you. The board liked you. You made me appear more, he faltered, more human. That was useful. I won't lie about that. Her chest constricted. The words confirmed every fear that had gnawed at her since the night she overheard him. Useful, she echoed, her voice shaking with fury. That's all I am to you? A prop. A puppet you can parade when it benefits you. No, he said quickly, stepping closer. That's how it started. But it's not what it is now. Her laugh was bitter, sharp. Then what is it? Alex. Because from where I stand, I've bent over backwards to prove myself, to survive in this city, and you've done nothing but use me. He flinched at her words, but pressed on. Emily, listen to me. You've changed everything. The way I think, the way I lead. For the first time, He broke off, his fists curling at his sides. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to not be in control. Her breath caught. For a fleeting moment, she saw the crack in his armor, the vulnerability he tried so desperately to hide. But then the anger returned, sharper than ever. You don't want me, she said, her voice rising. You want the way I make you look. You want the convenience of someone who challenges you just enough to polish your image. That's not love. Alex, that's manipulation. His eyes darkened. You think I don't care about you? I think, Emily said, her voice trembling, that you don't know how to care about anyone without making it a transaction. Silence, heavy, unforgiving. Alex's throat worked, but no words came. He had built empires out of speeches, crushed rivals with precision arguments. But now, facing her, he was mute. Emily's chest heaved with the weight of her choice, but she knew it had to be made. I can't do this anymore, she whispered. I won't be your pawn. She turned toward the door. Emily, his voice broke, raw and desperate now. Don't walk away. She paused, her hand trembling on the handle, tears threatening her eyes. Give me one reason why I should believe I mean anything to you beyond my usefulness. He stood frozen, every muscle rigid, his face a battlefield between pride and confession. But still, he couldn't say the words she needed to hear. Her tears fell, hot and silent. That's what I thought. And with that, Emily Carter walked out of Harrison & Co. The echo of the door closing behind her sounded like the final stroke of a gavel. For the first time in his life, Alexander Harrison felt what it was like to lose something he couldn't buy back, couldn't control, couldn't command. And for the first time, Emily felt both the sting of heartbreak and the faintest flicker of freedom. Alexander Harrison sat alone in his penthouse office long after the city had gone quiet. The Manhattan skyline glittered outside like a taunt. Every light in every window a reminder that the world carried on, whether he succeeded or failed. On his desk lay a stack of untouched reports, his pen poised but useless. His mind kept drifting back to the sound of her footsteps leaving, the soft click of the door as Emily Carter walked out of his life. He had lost deals before. He had lost money, allies, even friends. But this felt different. This wasn't about business. It wasn't about control. It was about something he had spent years denying himself, the simple, terrifying truth that he had fallen in love. For so long, he had convinced himself love was a liability. His father had preached it endlessly. Affection clouds judgment, emotion leads to ruin, strength means control. Alex had believed him, Until Emily, she hadn't come into his life polished or prepared. She came with stubborn honesty, clumsy courage, and a laugh that could dismantle the walls he'd built. She had forced him to see that perfection was a prison he'd locked himself in, and she'd left him with the key dangling just out of reach. Now, in the silence, Alex finally admitted what he had feared most. "It's not the company," he murmured to himself. "It's her. I don't just need her for the boardroom. I need her. Full stop." The words shook him more than any financial crisis ever had. Meanwhile, across Brooklyn, Emily sat curled on her small bed, staring at the cracked paint on the ceiling. The dress from the gala still hung in the corner, shimmering like a cruel joke. She replayed their fight in her mind, his confession that had felt like a transaction, her anger that had exploded into heartbreak. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to erase the way he looked at her when no one else was watching. But she couldn't. Her chest ached with questions she couldn't silence. Was I wrong? Did I run because it was easier than risking more? Do I fear him because he doesn't care, or because he cares too much? And I don't know how to bridge the gap between us. She thought of her father, gone too soon, telling her that New York was magic, that it was a place where the impossible could happen if you were brave enough to chase it. Brave enough, she whispered into the dark. But am I? Was it bravery to walk away from Alex, to protect herself from the wounds of loving a man who belonged to another world? Or was it cowardice running because she couldn't imagine being worthy of him, of his wealth, of the expectations that surrounded him? Tears slid silently down her cheeks. For the first time, Emily admitted that the class divide wasn't just in his mother's eyes or in Charlotte's smirk. It was in her own heart, too. She didn't just doubt Alex, she doubted herself. The next morning, Alex faced a different battlefield. Victoria Harrison sat at the head of the long dining table in the family estate, her silver hair gleaming, her gaze sharp as ever. "This nonsense with your secretary ends now," she declared. "Charlotte Whitmore is prepared to marry into this family. She has the pedigree, the connections, the standing. Emily Carter does not." Alex's jaw clenched. "Mother, this isn't your decision. It is if you care about this family's legacy," Victoria snapped. "Do you want to throw away everything your father built because of a fleeting infatuation?" Alex pushed back from the table, rising to his full height. His voice was calm but dangerous. "You think this is about legacy? About perception? For once, it's not. This is about me." Victoria's eyes widened, but he didn't stop. "I love her," Alex said, the words echoing in the cavernous room. "Not because she makes me look good, not because she's convenient, because she's the only person who makes me forget the weight I've been carrying since the day I took over this company." Silence, heavy, stunned. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. "Love won't protect you when the board loses faith." "Maybe not," Alex admitted. "But without her, I'm not sure I care about the board at all." It was the first time in his life he had said something his father would have called weakness. And yet, Alex had never felt stronger. Back in her apartment, Emily sat with her laptop open, resumes spread across the screen. Each job listing blurred together, meaningless. She couldn't focus. Her heart was elsewhere. Her mother's voice came through on the phone that evening, warm but cautious. "Emily, are you coming home? You sound tired." "Honey," Emily swallowed hard. "I don't know. Mom, maybe I should. But do you want to?" The question hit like a blow. "No," Emily whispered. "I don't." "Then don't run," her mother said softly. "Don't let fear make your choices." After the call, Emily stared out her window at the city lights, her chest heavy with contradiction. She had walked away to protect herself. But what if walking away had only proven she was too afraid to risk loving someone who might actually love her back on opposite sides of the city? Two people lay awake through the night, torn between fear and hope, pride and longing. For Alex, the realization was clear. He couldn't lose her. Not to pride, not to his family, not to his own fear of imperfection. For Emily, the question was harder: did she dare believe that love could exist between a Montana girl who barely scraped by and a Manhattan millionaire who had everything except freedom from his own armor? The turning point had come. Neither knew what the next move would be, but both knew this nothing could stay the same. The ballroom at the Metropolitan Club buzzed with polished laughter, the clinking of crystal glasses, and the low murmur of New York's elite. It was the Harrison Foundation's annual investors' reception, an event that had always been less about charity and more about displaying power. Emily Carter hadn't planned on being there. She had left Harrison & Co., after all. But a last-minute call from the office, her name still on the guest list, her presence requested by the board, had pulled her back into the glittering lion's den. She stood near the back of the room, in a simple black dress she could barely afford, feeling the familiar sting of eyes assessing her. The girl from Montana, the secretary, out of her depth, across the room. Alexander Harrison moved through the crowd like a man in command, flanked by board members and donors. Beside him glided Charlotte Whitmore, flawless in an emerald gown, her hand brushing his arm with a practiced intimacy that made Emily's stomach twist. Victoria Harrison, regal in silver, watched from a distance with the satisfaction of someone certain her plans were falling into place. Emily told herself she didn't care. She was only there to show professionalism, to leave no unfinished threads. But her heart betrayed her, beating harder every time Alex's gaze flicked toward her. It happened when the speeches began. The chairman of the board praised Harrison & Co.'s resilience through recent challenges, then motioned for Alex to take the stage. He stepped forward, his tuxedo immaculate, his posture commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alex began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room. "We stand here tonight not only as stewards of wealth, but as stewards of trust. Our company's future depends not only on profits, but on the integrity with which we lead." Emily felt her chest tighten. His words were sharper, more personal than usual. Something was building. Alex paused, his eyes sweeping the crowd, before settling deliberately on her. "And tonight," he continued, his voice steady, "I need to speak with honesty about something more important than numbers. Something I've hidden for too long." A ripple moved through the crowd. Charlotte straightened, anticipation glinting in her eyes. Victoria stiffened, her champagne glass frozen midair. Alex drew a breath. "I am in love, not with the woman my family has chosen for me, not with the image the board prefers, but with someone who changed everything I thought I knew about strength." A stunned silence fell. "I love Emily Carter," he said, his voice unshakable. "Not because of what she can do for me, not because of appearances, but because she is the only person who's ever had the courage to tell me the truth, even when I didn't want to hear it. Because she reminds me I'm human, and because without her, all of this," he gestured to the glittering room, "means nothing." The room erupted into shocked whispers. Emily's breath caught. Heat rose to her cheeks as every eye turned to her. She felt naked, exposed. Victoria's face hardened into marble. "Alex," she hissed, rising from her seat. "Enough." But he didn't flinch. "No. Mother, not enough. I've hidden behind control my entire life. Tonight, I choose something else." Charlotte let out a brittle laugh, trying to salvage her pride. "This is absurd. You're humiliating yourself over a secretary." Emily's fists clenched, but Alex's voice cut through before she could respond. "I'd rather be humiliated with the truth than admired for a lie," he said firmly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Emily's heart raced. Part of her wanted to weep with relief, to run into his arms, to believe every word. But another part recoiled. This is too much, too public, too powerful. She could feel the weight of judgment in every glance, the whispers about class, propriety, ambition. She imagined the headlines, "Millionaire CEO declares love for secretary." It didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a spotlight she hadn't asked for. When the applause finally came, hesitant at first, Then, swelling, Emily slipped quietly out of the side doors. Outside. The autumn air was crisp against her flushed skin. She leaned against the cool stone wall, her breath coming fast. He had chosen her, publicly, boldly, and yet, the words she had thrown at him still echoed in her mind. You don't know how to care without making it a transaction. Was this declaration love, or another grand gesture designed to win a battle with his mother, with Charlotte, with the board? Emily wrapped her arms around herself, torn between the pull of her heart and the fear gnawing at her soul. Behind her, the ballroom still glittered. Inside, Alexander Harrison had just set fire to the expectations of his family and peers. But outside, Emily Carter stood in the shadows, wondering if she dared believe she was more than the symbol he had made her out to be. The office was quiet after hours, its glass walls reflecting the fading glow of the city. Emily Carter stood by the window, her arms crossed tightly, as though bracing herself against the storm she knew was coming. She hadn't spoken to Alex since the night of his bold declaration. She hadn't dared, but now, at his request, she was here again in the very place where everything between them had begun. Alexander Harrison sat behind his desk, not with his usual air of command, but with a gravity that seemed to weigh him down. His tie was loose, his sleeves rolled. He looked less like a CEO and more like a man searching for the right words. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. Emily kept her gaze on the skyline. "I almost didn't, I know." The silence stretched, filled with everything unspoken. Finally, Alex rose and walked around the desk. He stopped a few feet from her. Not too close, not too far. "I owe you more than apologies," he began. "I owe you the truth. That night, when you left, I realized something. I don't want you as my secretary anymore." Emily flinched, the words cutting sharper than she expected. "So, now I'm not even useful enough to wait," he interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. "That's not what I mean. Emily, I don't want you working for me. I want you working with me, as my partner, in this company and in life." Her breath caught. She turned to face him fully, searching his eyes for any sign of mockery, but he looked steady, vulnerable even. "Partner?" she repeated, incredulous. "Yes." He took a step closer, his voice gaining strength. "You've seen things no one else here sees. You've spoken truths others are too afraid to say. You don't just manage me, you challenge me. You make this company better. You make me better. And that deserves equality, not hierarchy." Emily's chest tightened with emotion, but doubt clawed at her. "Do you realize how impossible that sounds? A girl from Montana suddenly a partner in one of the most powerful firms in New York. People will think I'm here because I love you," he asked softly. She swallowed hard. "Yes, exactly that. Let them think what they want," Alex said. "What matters is the truth. And the truth is, I trust you more than anyone in this building. Not because of love, but because of who you are." His words shook her. She wanted to believe them, wanted to step into the space he was offering. But the weight of power hung heavy. "Alex," she whispered, "love isn't supposed to be a transaction. But isn't that what this is? You giving me a title to prove you care?" "No," he said, his tone firm but tender. "This isn't a gift. It's recognition. You've already been doing the work. You've already been making the decisions that saved us. I'm just naming what's been true all along." Her throat tightened, tears burning at the edges of her eyes. She turned back to the window, trying to steady herself. "You scare me," she admitted. "Why?" "Because you have everything," she said, her voice trembling. "Money, power, influence. And me, I came here with nothing but a secondhand suitcase. Loving you feels like stepping into a world I'll never fully belong to." He moved closer, his reflection beside hers in the glass. "Then let me tell you something. All that money, power, reputation, it's empty without someone who keeps me human. That's what you are, Emily. You're not stepping into my world. You're creating one with me. Her tears finally spilled. "And if I say no," he swallowed hard, "then I'll let you go. Because love without choice isn't love at all." The words hung between them, raw and unshakable. Emily turned to face him, her heart pounding. His eyes were steady, not demanding, not pleading, simply open. For the first time, she didn't see a CEO or a millionaire. She saw a man stripped of armor, offering her the one thing he had never offered anyone else: his vulnerability. She took a trembling breath. "If I do this, if I stand beside you, it has to be as equals. No shadows, no puppets, just us." His lips curved into the faintest, most genuine smile she had ever seen on him. Deal. He extended his hand, not as a boss, but as a partner. For a long moment, Emily stared at it, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Then, slowly, she placed her hand in his, and for the first time, she felt not like someone grasping at survival, but like someone shaping her own destiny. 6 months later, the boardroom of Harrison & Co. looked different. The same gleaming table, the same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, but the atmosphere had shifted. There was less fear, less rigidity, and sitting at that table, no longer in the corner or behind the scenes, was Emily Carter. Not as a secretary, not as a pawn, but as a partner. The placard in front of her read, "Emily Carter, co-managing partner." The adjustment hadn't been easy. The first weeks were filled with whispers, doubts, headlines dissecting her background. Montana farm girl rises to Wall Street power. Some called it romantic, others scandalous. But Emily had met every gaze with calm dignity, proving her worth not through speeches, but through steady, practical decisions. Alex had stood beside her through every challenge, but he had also learned to step back, to let her lead in her own way. It was new territory for him, letting go of control, but it had made them both stronger. Even Victoria Harrison, after months of cold civility, had begun to soften. She would never admit it openly, but one evening, over brandy, she had told Alex quietly, "She makes you laugh. That's worth more than any pedigree." As for Charlotte Whitmore, she had faded back into society pages and charity luncheons. Her chapter in their story closed. On a crisp spring evening, Alex and Emily attended a business forum at the Plaza Hotel. It was their first major public appearance as co-leaders. The ballroom sparkled with chandeliers, the air filled with the clinking of glasses and the low hum of power. Emily wore a simple emerald dress, her hair swept back, pearls at her ears. Alex stood beside her, confident but relaxed in a way that once would have been unthinkable. The evening flowed smoothly until the microphone betrayed him. Midway through his keynote address, just as he reached a critical point, the sound system screeched with feedback. The audience winced, some laughing nervously. Alex froze for a fraction of a second, his old instincts flashing the urge to control, to rage against imperfection. But before the tension could grow, Emily stepped forward. She took the microphone with a calm smile. "Well, that's New York technology for you," she said, her voice light but steady, always keeping us humble. The audience chuckled, the atmosphere softening. She continued seamlessly, picking up the thread of Alex's speech, weaving in her own insights. Within moments, the crowd was engaged again, not with embarrassment, but with admiration. Alex watched her, his chest swelling with something deeper than pride. Months ago, such a slip would have undone him. But tonight, with Emily beside him, imperfection became not a weakness, but a moment of connection. When the sound returned, Alex rejoined her, their words flowing in tandem, their rhythm effortless. The applause at the end was thunderous, not for him alone, not for her alone, but for both of them together. Later, as they stood by the window overlooking Central Park, Alex leaned close and murmured, 6 months ago, I would have turned that microphone fiasco into a federal case. Emily laughed softly. 6 months ago, I would have panicked. And now, she said, resting her hand over his. We remind each other that perfection isn't the goal. Presence is. He kissed her temple gently. "You're the only reason I know that." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city lights shimmer, each one a reminder of how far they had come. A week later, Emily returned to Montana for the first time since everything had changed. Alex came with her, trading his tailored suits for jeans and a flannel shirt that made him look both out of place and strangely at home. Her mother met them at the farmhouse door, eyes misting as she saw her daughter, not as the girl who had left with a suitcase, but as the woman who had returned with purpose. They spent the weekend walking through the orchards, eating pie on the porch, laughing under a sky filled with stars. For Alex, it was the first time in years he had felt no weight pressing on his shoulders. For Emily, it was the proof that the two worlds she had feared could never coexist, could, in fact, fit together. Back in New York, life continued. Deals were made, crises managed, boardrooms filled, but through it all, Alex and Emily had found a rhythm not perfect, not without conflict, but real. He still drank his coffee black, 4 cups before noon. She still teased him about his endless Navy ties. He still wrestled with the instinct to control, and she still reminded him to laugh at himself. And together, they had built something new, a partnership not defined by titles or wealth, but by trust. One evening, as they walked home across the Brooklyn Bridge, Emily paused, looking out at the city lights reflected on the river. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "how different things might have been if I hadn't laughed that day in the boardroom?" Alex smiled, slipping his hand into hers. "Then I'd still be the man who thought power meant control. And I never would have learned the truth." She squeezed his hand. "And what truth is that?" He turned to her, his eyes warm, unguarded. "That true power isn't about control. It's about love, the kind that makes us free." Emily's throat tightened, tears shimmering in her eyes. She leaned into him, their foreheads touching, the city stretching wide and endless before them. Imperfect, unlikely, hard-won, but real. And that was enough. At its heart, this story isn't just about wealth or romance. It's about what it means to be human in a world that so often measures worth by titles, money, and appearances. Alexander Harrison believed power came from control, from perfection. Emily Carter, with her quiet resilience, showed him that true strength lies in vulnerability, in the courage to laugh at our mistakes, and in the ability to love without conditions. For those of us who have lived long enough to carry both triumphs and regrets, there's a timeless reminder here: control is fleeting, but connection endures. We may build careers, fortunes, or reputations, but what defines us in the end are the relationships we dare to nurture, even when they feel risky or imperfect. Emily and Alex's journey tells us that dignity is not about status, and freedom is not about wealth. It is about choosing love that allows us to be seen as we are flawed, growing, and real. So, perhaps the question we should ask ourselves is, are we clinging to control, or are we brave enough to embrace the kind of love and honesty that can set us free? Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. If Emily and Alex's story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us and helps keep these stories alive. Stay with us for more heartfelt tales of love, hope, and second chances.